Good morning. Happy Friday. There have been a couple of Supreme Court decisions that have generated a little bit of interest. The left is certainly, or at least the very progressive left, is certainly tap dancing for joy. The somewhat right-leaning stacked court has passed a couple of decisions, Supreme Court decisions, one extending the Civil Rights Act to cover LGBTQ individuals, the other requiring the DHS to follow certain legal channels in eliminating DACA. The DACA one is pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. It's not very interesting. A lot of people have the misconception that if Obama created DACA through an executive order, then Trump should be able to eliminate DACA through an executive order. That is not quite the way it works. You can create a benefit for a class of people through an executive order. But once that benefit exists, people have an interest in it. They have a vested right in it. If they qualify for that particular benefit, then they get that particular benefit. You can't just take it away from them willy-nilly. You can't take it away from them through an executive order. You have to follow the proper channels. The president could start the ball rolling. He could issue an executive order to an agency to rescind it, to start the process. But they have to go through I don't remember what they call it. It's the APA. It's Administrative Procedures Act or something like that. They have to give notice. They have to do various steps to get rid of it. So all the court said was that the DHS didn't do what the DHS was supposed to do in order to get rid of DACA. They could do it. They just didn't do the steps they needed to do. And they needed to do those steps first. Whether or not the Supreme Court will allow DACA to be eliminated at the end of it, I don't know. But at this point, the Supreme Court is signaling that DHS can eliminate DACA. So we'll see how it goes. The second and much more interesting case was extending LGBTQ rights to civil rights to LGBT. So, of course, if you read the Civil Rights Act of 64 and 68, et cetera, there is no basis for making LGBTQ protected classes. There are no protections in those acts for them. Now, California has long had protections, and other states have had protections for LGBT. I think everybody remembers Bake the Cake Bigot, Masterpiece Cake, or whatever it was called, from Colorado. Now, there are some very interesting conversations you could have regarding rights. One of the fundamental things that I always like to talk about is no right is absolute, and usually your right to do something is infringed by someone else's right to not have you do it. And the Constitution may protect both. It may protect both rights. And so what the courts have to do is they have to find that line where one right ends and the other right begins. And in the case of Bake the Cake Bigot and other things, you have a right to associate with who you want and to not associate with who you don't want to associate with. And if you are a small business owner, especially like a sole proprietor, maybe you don't want to hire or cater to LGBTQ persons. Now, I'm saying this, that's not my particular interest in it. I'm very social libertarian. I don't care what people do as long as it doesn't affect me. So if you want to be LGBTQ, you go ahead and do you. It literally does not matter to me. But it matters to some people. And the question is, should those people have a right to associate with who they want to? And that is a real fundamental right. I mean, you say, well, they're racist, they should get over it. Well, The same people who say that think, well, I shouldn't have to associate with racists. I think companies should be able to fire racists. It's people should be allowed to associate with who they want or not associate with who they don't want. And anyway, you could have interesting legal discussions over it either way. And certainly, I really like Kavanaugh's position, because Kavanaugh, I think, had it best. He said that the end result is fine and great and dandy, and he has no issues with it. And congratulations to LGBTQ people who now have civil rights protection. But Congress didn't pass that law, and we should really wait for Congress to pass that law before we give the protections of that law to people. And the Supreme Court has taken the position that it could just manufacture whole cloth, which isn't new. This is what the Supreme Court's been doing for a long time, since like the 30s or 40s, I think. I think Warren was the one who really started doing this. He's the one who started basically reading things into the Constitution that really weren't there, and began sort of making things up, or inferring rights that don't exist. And that's how you ended up with things like Roe versus Wade. Again, you could make very competent arguments, very competent legal arguments, that the state should have the right to control whether or not the state allows abortion in the state. Each state should have the right to determine it. You can make a very competent legal argument for it. Again, I don't care. I'm actually pro-choice. I don't care what you do with your body as long as it doesn't affect me. But you could make good arguments for it, for allowing each state to decide whether or not it's going to allow abortion for itself. But the right has lost. The right has long lost this argument. The language that is used is the language of the left. The right doesn't have control over the language used. If you don't use the language of the left, then you're a bigot, you're a racist, and the right has cucked to that. The right is defanged. It is useless. And you can see it today. I mean, you've got progressives running roughshod over everything, rioting, looting, burning. And the right and the institutions, even though the president's a Republican and the Senate is Republican and the House is completely incompetent, even though it's Democratic controlled, it couldn't find its head up its ass with two hands and a flashlight. Even then, they're getting what they want. The progressives are getting what they want, and the right is powerless to stop them. So, that's just the way it is. Anyway, that's about it. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.